Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is for you. It's been a while. Welcome back to LAMDA Log. For real time, it is Saturday, July 25th, and I have just finished my first week of term 4. And so in this video, I'm going to go back and recap all of the last week of term 3. Then I'll make individual videos for term 1. Day 1 of term 4, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And they'll be pretty short since we're in projects. We're just doing Shakespeare project, but I'll kind of try to reveal it as I learned it. Okay, so I have so many different notes in different places because it was crazy. So I have like these calendars I made to keep track of everything. I have this checklist to make sure I was finishing everything. There's July as well. And so these aren't up to date anymore, but they're good little record keepers. But then I made an individual like this pattern. That was a good calendar. I'm probably going to put these in my journal. Okay. So week 9. Okay, term 3, week 9, day 1, the 29th of June, 2026, my thesis day. Last week of term 3. So I went very first this day back from break. As you could tell from last video, the weekend was crazy. I just was there constantly all the time. It was nonstop. And so we just kept going. And mine went well. I'm going to attach it either to the end of this video, probably to the end of this video, or as a separate video in between the end of this term and next term. I have a pretty good copy of it. It's I forgot some lines and I did whatever, but it was all good. I'm really proud of what I attempted to do. So you can see it and have your own feelings. Then we had one about, this one was so good. This one was brilliant. It was about the troupe of actors from Midsummer, Flute and Bottom and all of those people, and how they had heard about the play that happened in Hamlet, and how they were going to make truth plays and then reveal it. And so they went through different Shakespeare plays, like revealing truths and ruining the stories. Like they told the witches prophecy to Macbeth, but then they clarified it so that it made sense, and he just killed Macduff and became king and tyrant of Scotland. And then throughout, and it was so funny and so well put together. It was brilliant. And then one came together that was called What Happened to the Jailer's Daughter. And I can't remember which Shakespeare play this is from, but it really kind of was answering that question of how do you answer this question? How do you go about it? And it was about all these different versions that she had thought of and tried to come up with. And how it's like this difficult story because it's usually played for laughs, but it has to do with sexual assault and all of these heavy topics, but it's usually like, tee-hee, who cares about her? And so it was humanizing that, and it was really just like empowering, and I was like, yeah. It ended with the actor standing on a table and say, F Shakespeare, I hope he effing dies, which was hilarious because he's already dead, and because it just I knew what had happened through this whole process, and it was a tumultuous, I think that's the word, process of getting this thesis up on its feet and everything. And it was a struggle, and she persevered and overcame, and it was just like, yeah. And we all cheered, and we love Shakespeare, but he failed a lot of characters, and he was imperfect, and he was a product of his time. And there's so many complicated feelings because He was who he was. Um, then we had another one, which was this horror story called "Commit to the Craft," about this actress who was playing Lady Macbeth in a haunted theater, and how these witchy fates came and were going to make her do this performance. And the last actress who didn't follow them was killed, and all these things. It was really good. And then there was a thesis. I didn't get the name written here, but I have it written in another place because I have so many notes all over the place. This last one got crazy. Let's see where I am. Ba-bum, dum, bum, ba-dum. This one was called Euphemie Macbeth, and it was about the daughter of Macbeth they put away and was going to become the heir. And so it's like the question was, who, like, what if Macbeth and Lady Macbeth did have an heir? And then there's this next one, which was called From the Dust. And it was this like Western about this woman who was married to a Native American man, and he was killed. And she turned to robbery and became like a highway woman, because she had to provide for her family. And it's like, what makes somebody come to that? And then the perseverance is there. And then it was lunch. And for lunch, I helped a friend practice her thesis with an audience. And I was kind of the only one there. And she was doing it in front of her advisor. And it was a cool idea. And it was fun. And we were doing it. I was so not stressed this whole time. And I was just so happy to help. And it was great. I loved this. Oh, it was so good. And then the other thesis, the next one was called Diza with a D, and it was about this person who was giving an AI lecture and then was possessed by this diva named Diza with a D. And she was like an old school Broadway girl, and like crapped on AI and was like, no, it's about connection and can they do this kind of things. And it was a joy. It was great. And then yeah, it was funny and delightful. And then the next one was called The Woman Machine, I believe, or just Woman Machine. Lady Machine. Yeah, Lady Machine. I must have double checked that, but I thought it was Woman Machine. But this one was cool because it was about this like limbo area where all these Shakespearean women came together and they couldn't pass to the other side until they like solved their problems. And what's her name? The main character from The Tempest. Oh, what's her name? Hermione? No, that can't be right. It's like Miranda. That's her name. I wrote it down. Miranda is having like this peek into it, and she's never seen another woman, and she kind of helps them process their emotions and their feelings, and then this reconcile. It's just it was this cool, really cool, empowering, inspiring thing. And then the next thesis was a sequence of 5 booths about a girl growing up with an absent father and always kind of making a wish and speaking to her father in this booth. It was great. And then I had a rehearsal for my political thriller one. And then I had another rehearsal. I had one scheduled, but this was a whole heck of a thing. We had this one scheduled. But the student who was running the tech, she was supposed to schedule it afterwards, but then there was a fire alarm, so we all had to leave. And then she didn't get time to do her rehearsal because his went over, and then there was a fire alarm, and there was this whole thing. And so they dedicated to give her all this time in the morning. But it was this whole mess because the next day. So that was Monday. and now going into week 9, day 2, the 30th of June, 2026, Tuesday. We got to school. I got later than I wanted. Um, I took a Lime bike, which is fun. It's enjoyable. The wind and it's an electric bike, so it's really enjoyable, but it's kind of expensive. So, eh. But I slept in. I was getting exhausted at the end of this week. The person who was supposed to go last night, but then the fire alarm and the rehearsal running over, um, had lost all her props, including a super expensive, like, borrowed prop that her friend borrowed. And we were looking everywhere for it and nobody could find it. And we went all day. I checked the trash. I like looked in the dumpster. They started looking at the cameras, and the only people who come in there were the cleaners. So it didn't make sense. And there were other more valuable things in the studio. So it's like, why, where, how, what's going on? And so, um, yeah, later, like during lunch, um, that student and the other one in the play, they dove into the dumpster, opened up all the bags, and finally found it, and it was just thrown away. And other people had said they checked as well, but they're like, you don't care as much as we do. And so it was all luckily fine and okay, but it was hectic, and I can't believe they threw it away. Of all the things, I don't know, they must have just saw this bag and thought, oh, that's trash. I don't know, doesn't make any sense. But at least it wasn't stolen. So we had the first one. It was called Callbacks. It was about a bunch of people waiting for callbacks while this woman um, talked about all of her lovers with this man, and he was a musician and like these past loves, and then all this while it was like experiencing these callbacks, like these loves with music and with dance while she was prepping for this callback. It was cool. Oh, and then this was one of my favorites. It was called Just Cause, and it was about like kind of a not apocalyptic, but a future dystopian world where you weren't allowed to express yourself and you weren't allowed to say certain things, and the government would silence you. And so there was a fool who was in prison, and he would be brought out to sing, and then he would sing truth about like situations. um yeah, and there was this one phrase, I don't remember it now, but I can't remember. But he would get the audience to sing along, and then they would send somebody to beat him up. And like, he got slapped in the face, he got pushed, he got thrown over, his guitar got smashed. um all of these different things happened, and he kept just trying until he was later killed and replaced by another like mechanical guy. And it was so good, and I couldn't stop singing, because there's moments where we were singing after he had stopped because he had been silenced. But and they tried to get us to sing along to the like government stooge kind of story, and I it's one of the most actively involved I felt in a story. I felt so compelled to continue to sing, and I did. And people joined me, and some people thought I was a plant, but I was like, no, I just felt it. And he had workshopped this and had mentioned something about people continuing to sing, and so I felt it, and I just continued because I knew it wouldn't ruin, it could only enhance his story. But it was good. It was one of the most affected I've felt from a piece of theater. It's great, just crying and singing. Oh, I hope I'm like that in real life, and I can say the messages that need to be said, and I can stand up for truth and goodness and protect people who aren't protected. Then there was another one called Bound. And it was about this musician who was trying to come up with a story, but he had alienated like a song and an album, but he had alienated his friends, and then he gets inspired by his friends to write this music. It was cool. It was inspirational. It was connected. It was a good time. And then this one was spooky and fun. It was about this evil heart eater, like when people were judged. Um, it was this person's job to eat the hearts of the damned, and she was having stomach problems. And then it came to a point where she ate a heart of someone she knew, and she's like, that doesn't feel right. That I don't think this was correct. And it was the question about like who is worthy to judge, and what judgment is correct. And it was cool. It was really good. And she had these hearts that just were like thrown over a door. You get a knock, you throw over a door, and just like devour the hearts. It was really cool. And then it was the political thriller I was in, all about a father and his kidnapped wife who's a senator. That one was really fun. And yeah, that one was cool because it was all like political intrigue and stuff, and he's trying to like father his children while I don't know if I've explained this yet, but I'll give you the gist. While he's trying to like save his wife, and he doesn't want to cross the line and use the same tactics that this other like alt-right government, totally country controlled group is doing. But he's like, maybe we need to use violence with violence, and he like decides to kidnap the person he believes is responsible, this other Secretary of Homeland Security or something. Yeah, and I played a state trooper who like came in and was threatening. So it was fun. I was like a little, and then I'm just there to like invite him to church, but he's like not for it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I thought you were like going to give me information about my wife. I was like, no, those are good guys. Yeah. And it was fun to be like this intimidating presence. And they had some nice music behind it that created the suspense. It was fun. And then there was this next one, which was about like a matador. And his story, he starts out telling the story about how people wouldn't recognize him, but how it was about the exploration of masculinity and what it means to be a man and a matador and a hero and a legend, and what sacrifice that takes, and love, and there must be opposite in all things to make the good things mean something. And it was beautiful, and it was like so stylized and specific. He would do the moves of the matador, and it was just like, ugh, I'm getting chills thinking about it. Can you see? It was good. I love that one. And then funnily enough, the next one was a clown version of a matador, like two matadors who were gender queer. They were gender nonconforming. I don't know if one was, it was a one person show where they played both of these matadors that like fell in love. But one was like a woman pretending to be a man, and a man, they were both women pretending to be men. And maybe they identified that way, and it was just older, but it was just slapstick and ridiculous and like horse gags and so over the top and funny, and just like a feat of endurance and impressive specificity. And it was great. And then it was lunch, and that's when we found the prop bag finally. And then I was able to run the show during lunch with them because I was doing sound. And then this one was a very experimental kind of idea. The next one after lunch, which, what was it called? The political thriller was called Requiem for Mortality. Then the Matador one was called In the Shadow of the Sun, the serious Matador one. Then the goofy clown Matador one was Torreando el Amor. Torreando. Is that like a torment, like a cycle, like a tornado? Torreando. I don't know what that means exactly. El amor is the love. Like a tumultuous love? Unsure. And then this one was called A Body of Water. And it was about this guy like talking to his inner voice and saying like he wanted to tell a non-narrative story, and like, how do you express this thing? And it was the inner voice like criticizing him the whole time, which was an interesting thing because that's how a lot of people might feel like with his thing. It's like, what are you doing? And so he voiced the concerns, but he wanted to tell how like people are water mostly, and we don't have borders and we don't have boundaries, and we're all kind of this fluidness and naturalness. And I can't explain it much more than that. It was just like a self exploration of water and non-linear, non-narrative art. And there was a kiddie pool, and it was enjoyable. It was, yeah, it was complete. It was so much like this person. And then we had um, Journey of Fools, which was the one I was teching, which we had found the props for, and it's about this girl dealing with the trauma of her dad taking his own life, and feeling responsible for it. And so she's conjured up this idea of a fool. Um, and it was hilarious because the fool has a pre-show where she invites everybody in, and she's playing like this priest, and so she's like praying for people and singing and blessing them and casting out demons and doing these things. But in between each thesis there's a viva voce, which is when the actor speaks to the board, and like explains themselves, and then they come back out. And yeah, and so sometimes it takes a little longer, and we waited for 20 minutes just doing this pre-show, and the girl doing it like came up to me and she was like, I'm dying up here, where are they? And so she just kept going, and it was brilliant, and it was so funny. But then it like is dealing with this trauma and this and what it means, and this car crash happens, and this moment of truth, and it's beautiful. It was really well done. I cried. Then I had rehearsal for one that was about King James, called Queen James. We finished adding these new elements that he added right before, which is great. And then I went to the collab show, um, which was wild. It was these 4 shows that were like original pieces that people wrote, called Tiny Women, which was this really campy, over the top spoof on Little Women and like what happened later. And then Is This the Real Life was about these different stories about like women who are like catching up in a club toilet, like restroom, and they were like talking about their crazy life experiences. And then Is the Mundane Ever Really Mundane was about like this movement piece where like we observe these people, and they were trying to make something of their art. And then the last one was not my favorite just because of the subject material. I think it was objectively funny, but it was just pretty sacrilegious. It was called 13, 14, 15. It was about the rejected apostles of Jesus, and Jesus is like this nepo baby frat bro who's like doing his thing. And so they weren't invited to Last Supper, so they decide they're going to kill Jesus, poison him, and like this whole thing. And they slowly like are killing apostles and doing this slapstick shenanigans. And it wasn't my humor. It just made me uncomfortable. But I was right in the front row, so it would have been like a big thing to just like stand up and walk out. So maybe I should have, but I didn't. And it wasn't like a super long piece, but not for me. The audience loved it though. And that was the end of day 2. So long days. Day 3, where are we at? 25-ish minutes? Cool. A little less. Okay, week 9, day 3, which is Wednesday, the 1st of July, 2026. So I got in early for one of the texts I was working on. Now I have to move to this new, different notebook. And yeah, it was great. I had my little rehearsal. And then, bum, ba, bum, bum, bum. It was the first thesis was called The Archived, and it was this clown piece about this one woman show, like playing all these different characters and having discovered this um, enchanted version of Macbeth, I think it was. Oh, I wish I wrote down more notes now because I didn't. But um, it was like an original copy or something in Shakespeare's handwriting, and it was like possessed, and then she accidentally stole it from the archives, and then she was possessed with a ghost, and she was like killing people, and it's like, oh, did I do that? Did I kill my colleague? And what happened? And it was so silly and so fun. It was so fun. And then we had Queen James, which I was in, and it's the story of James the First of England, James the Sixth of Scotland, who was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, this half sister of um, Elizabeth I, and he was gay, and at least bisexual. He had male lovers, and so it was about him kind of talking to the audience and having this dream experience with them, where he kind of starts out wondering if he was ever like supposed to be king, but he has this dream that he was just a shepherd boy who was picked up and plopped into kingdom. Um, and and then there are different characters, and they're all played by men. And he goes by a let me get their order right. The first scene is with Was It Me? I'm spacing. It's been a minute. I think it was a man that he kind of fell in love with. Yeah, because he had two scenes with him. And so it was him like meeting this person, being like, oh, and he wants to like do things. And we're all this entity that is like playing these characters in his dream. And so it's like this feeling where we see that this guy that he has a thing for is a noble person. And we hear about Lady Mar, who I play, who is being ruthless. And she's this half pagan, half Protestant. She's very religious and very Christian, but doesn't get rid of her pagan beliefs in Scotland, and she comes in and teaches him, and he's having bad dreams. And so we have these different vignettes where it goes back and forth through time, and mine is when he was a little boy and he had a bad dream and he's getting abused by one of his teachers, and I give him an amulet so that he can sleep better. And then there's the Dutch queen who he marries, but she knows about his story, and that he is gay and has these male lovers. And so she wants what she was promised. And then the lover comes back and they get married. And then this woman who he accuses of being a witch, who's been saying these lines throughout, that kind of introduces these scenes and these new characters to come in. He's been accusing her of witchcraft, and then he beats her because of whatever. And then it like rotates, and we're all getting beat at the same time, but he's attacking one of us at a time, but we kind of just like go into position, and then he kills the entity but kills all of us. And so it ends with him like strangling his lover. And so it's like this cool thing about, I don't even know what you would say it's about. It's about identifying what it means to be a man, a king, a gay man during this time, how you can reconcile this awful behavior with this man who just didn't feel right. It was beautiful. I loved it. And then the next one was called The Trial of Medea, and it was posed in like two parts. One was like interactive with the audience and talking to the audience, and another was this mock audition for two people going up for this part of Medea, where it was really going to be racially told, and that the mob was going to kill the children, not Medea herself, and they were going to be like KKK mob members, and it was like super like negative, and all the people on the production team were not black, and so they don't have that perspective. And then a white Latina woman comes in, and then I was like, wait, you're a minority too. What if we did it with ICE and we make it more relevant? And so it was the question of like exploiting trauma and tragedy for dramatic purposes, and like what is right and who can tell what stories and stuff. And it was cool. And I did the tech on that one. And then we had one called Our Cloister Gandersheim, which was about this nun who found these stories that were quite like sexually explicit and interesting, and she wanted to write them for like retranslate them and write them for herself. And it was interesting because she was finding glory for God in it, but it was sexually explicit things that had to do with pedophilia and necrophilia and these like objectively abhorrent things, but she was finding God in it. And so it was like, how does she deal with that and everything, which was cool. And the movement stuff was really cool. And it had some like rock music in it, which was sick. And then the next one was called This Woman's Thing, which was like, it was a whatchamacallit, like had commedia dell'arte with like masks and went through all of these different scenes and ideas about womanhood and giving birth and doctors mistreating you and this music and like these whole vibes, and you could kind of stand anywhere, and it was like in this like nightclub kind of vibe, but it was just like everywhere, and it was so fun and interesting and artistic and explorative. It was really cool. And then the next one was called The Unsaid, which was like at like a cabaret, and these different characters were Shakespearean women. Was it all women? I think so. But they all came in and were singing songs and performing, and one of the women wanted to tell her own story, and then they were like being censured by people, and so there were people who were coming in who were trying to control them and like shut them down, and so they're getting the right information to do so while they're just telling stories. And there was some like queer and feminist ideas and things going around, but it's just fun over the top stuff, with this idea of what can be said. And then there's this one character who has been sober for a while, and she isn't getting her part. Like she has this idea, and the person won't listen to her idea, and it's this whole thing. But she's doing great. And then yeah. And then Purple Tears, which was, oh no, I had a rehearsal during lunch for my last one, which was it's called Skeen. It was the story of Theseus. And then it was Purple Tears, which was an interactive story telling of the story of the War of the Roses, and kind of breaking it all through and having people to play different parts and kind of explaining it, setting up Richard III. And it ended with saying like, now is the morning of my disc, and then it stopped. And so this was all setting up Richard III, which was fun to kind of get the context of the War of the Roses to see how it all led up to that more clearly. And then we had one that was called Catharsis, which was interesting. It was this game show where a woman could, I guess not a game show, but I guess it was a game show where she could embody the deaths of different women, and she would embody the deaths of these Shakespearean characters. And then they were exploiting her and thinking of and treating her so poorly in it, and just they only wanted the views, and they were just enjoying her suffering, and it was for profit. And she's a Black woman, and so it was extra layered there about how these men would exploit and take advantage of a woman's suffering as she's portraying other women's suffering and deaths for views. And especially thinking of like how there's big discourse right now about general audiences only being able to interact and enjoy Black suffering, but not Black joy. It was extra like poignant there. Um, and then the last one of the night was, oh, it was brilliant. It was called Bel Arabi, which is Arabic for something which I don't remember. But it's about this Arab man um, who he kind of had these three stages. One was trying to enter, I think, the United States and not being enough, and having all of his records, all of his passports from forever, and all of these different things and everything he had. And then they were just like, okay, but we need proof of existence. And he's like, I'm here. Is that not proof of my existence? I have all my paperwork, and I have my birth certificate in Arabic and in English, and they're both original copies, and I have my passports, every single one I've ever had, and I have this and I have that, and it's not enough because we need you to prove you exist. It's like, my being here is my existence, and why is that not enough? And then it went into this character that was like talking to a lover, and then he breaks out into Arabic poetry, and it's beautiful, and he's embodying this not caricature, but this Arabic idea of a person who's like sharing snacks, and it was like a familiar cultural character, and it was so celebratory of Arab culture, and of not even Islam specifically, but of, I think there were some ties to that, not even a ton. It was mostly just of the Arabic language, and and the beauty of it, and the poetry of it, and what it meant. And then the last bit was like stand up, kind of talking about how this language is complex and poetic naturally, and it's like the oldest continued spoken language. It's older than predates Islam. It predates all of these things, and it's still spoken today, and it kind of influences the culture and everything. It was awesome. I loved it. And so then yeah, so then I went to I had a rehearsal with the skiing again to make sure we had everything set up in the space. And I missed part of the next collab, which was the other original pieces, and I caught the last two, and I think I only missed one, which had something to do with like the human body, and I don't know. But it was about how to build a man. It was about masculinity and different people's perspectives on the toxic masculine culture, and the red pilled manosphere, and suppressed homoeroticism, and what it is to be a man. And they addressed at the beginning, they're like, we don't know, these are just our ideas, but we're not perfect, and we haven't really figured it out yet, but we think it's important to talk about, so let's get into it. And so it was these different scenes, and then they would break and like discuss it as the people, not just the characters, and be like, why do you want to do this, and why don't you want to do that? And they played up their characters as themselves a little bit as they're writing this piece. That was cool. And then this next one was called Smoothie of Hell. And it was the idea of this girl who gets hit by a car and then becomes a fruit. It was like hit by a fruit truck. And then she becomes a fruit. And then she goes to purgatory as she's trying to escape hell. And there's this banana. I can't adequately make this up. And they just like put on little hats and costumes that made them look like the fruits. And then there's this big puppet banana. It wasn't even a puppet. It was just a stuffed banana on a stick. And then somebody like sang for it. And he was in charge of purgatory and was sending all the fruits to the giant smoothie to go to hell, basically. And it was something else. It was wild. It was hilarious. It was crazy. Yeah. And that was the end of Wednesday. Thursday, the 2nd of July, last day of thesis performances. We had 2 theses that were postponed till the next day that were also gorgeous, that I loved, but we'll get to those next week when I make that video, today or tomorrow. And the first one was called A Willing Ear Inclined. Ah, this one was juicy. It was about this girl who was playing the woman in Measure for Measure. Oh, what's her name? I should know this. I did that. The Anthony? I think that was his name, the Anthony speech, her brother. But anyway, the nun. And it was about her scene partner who was playing the priest who like says, "Hey, sleep with me and I'll let your brother go," kind of a thing. And he was like inappropriate and like didn't do boundaries well. Like he like grabs her face at one point and it's like, whoa, we got to stick to the to all the stuff. And the director's like really like, hey, don't change the direction, don't change the what you went over with the intimacy director. Don't do this. That's unsafe. That's uncomfortable. It's wrong. And so, but he was just kind of like an innocent guy. Not innocent. He was a naive, unpracticed person, but he was kind of sweet, just stupid. And then the director turned out to be like more sinister, and he did all the other things, and there was controlling and stuff, and the actor comes back at one moment and he sees them in like this compromising position, and the main girl like won't make eye contact. He's like, "Is everything okay?" And the director's like, "Yeah, we're just working on the scene. No worries, you can get out of here." And it's just this uncomfortable thing where this guy has power over her, and she liked him and she enjoyed working with him, but now he's crossed a line and now she's stuck, and it's just ugh. It was great. Then we had Poop, which was all about what is written on bathroom walls and kind of telling these stories and trying to find connection and purpose and a voice, and then leading into political stance and about trying to make a difference. And it was goofy because these 2 people came into this like club bathroom, and they were like just reading things on the wall and trying to connect and stuff. And then they would act out the stories, and then it came to like, what do you write on walls and why do you do it, and how do you make a difference, and how do you be heard and be understood? Yeah. And then it was my last performance, which was Skiing, which was the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. And I played the Minotaur, and I wasn't off book for this one, so I just kind of like held the script, but I was mostly off book, so I was able to like embody it, and it was just like fighting and stuff, and I threw someone over onto a crash mat and I picked people up, and I was like, I'm feasting on the blood. And there's this great line, let's see if I remember it. I have planted in this place a garden of bones from which the only flower is regret. Good line. Great job, dude. And that was great, and that was fun. And that guy, he went through it too, because it was originally like a choose your own adventure story, but then people kept dropping out, and it was in verse, and it was like classical text. And so then somebody got a concussion and they weren't able to do one of the parts. And so we had somebody join last minute. And then so she was playing Dionysus and just read the story from a script book, but she was super collaborative and was incredible. And we pulled it off, and it was a great, great time. But it was just so much. And then we had the demonic tragedy of Bruce Wayne, which was Shakespeare's Batman, which was sick. And it was about the story of Batman. I think before he's officially become Batman, he's just like an unnamed vigilante. And then he falls in love with this woman, and she tells him to stop, to give it up and to be with her. And he says, okay, fine, I will. And then he thinks, one last night, I'll go out and fight for justice. And he gets stabbed and he's going to die. shot or stabbed or something. And then he comes out, and then like the devil comes, and he makes a deal with the devil to be able to become this symbol and this demon of darkness that fights for justice, but loses his love in the process. And it made me feel the sacrifice of Batman more than anything before. It was cool. And then the next one was like a super like typical scene. It was called Phantom Power, and it was about this guy who his father passed away, and his father owned this theater, and he was a famous actor, and he wanted his son to play like Hamlet, but Hamlet wasn't like Shakespeare. It was like written for this, and he didn't believe in ghosts, and in his will, his father wanted this ghost scene in it. This is silly. And then like his ghost father appears, but he doesn't recognize him, and he says all these things, and it's like this cool idea. It was cool. Um, and then the next one was Welcome to My Brain Neurons, which was about this woman, and it was like that scene in SpongeBob where he's trying to do fine dining, and Squidward or Mr. Krabs says, I think it's Squidward. I think it's where Squidward is trying to impress the guy with the unibrow. Whatever his name is. But he's like, forget everything that isn't fine dining. And so he like goes into his brain. You see the guy like burning all the files and stuff. So it was like that. So we had all files on our seats, and she would ask for them, and it was about reconciling a relationship with a friend, and just connecting in this chaoticness. And it was so cool, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was beautiful. And then we had lunch, and I didn't have anything to work on because I had finished. And then we had our last one, which was called Menswear, and it was this like clowning silent piece, where he had this face makeup, and everybody had um, this makeup, and there was this band playing, and he was clearly like an unhappy person. Half of his face was like a sad clown, and the other half was just him. And so like it started with like just him, and then he was like unhappy. There's alcohol and beer bottles and stuff all strewn about his apartment. It was a mess, and he just was on his bed. He starts and is just unhappy with himself and unhappy with life, and then he like goes out and kind of has this dream about a woman, um, and then like these takes him into dreams. The music takes him into dreams, and he like is gonna have a moment, and he dances with her, and he has these things in this moment. I think she sings. And then he comes out of it, and then he's unhappy, and then he tries to dream again, and then she's with someone else, and he's trying to make these connections and stuff, and then eventually at the end he's out of this dream, and then he sees a woman, and he like has this moment where he's going to talk to her, and it like is he's finding inspiration from the dream, and it was cool. It was deep. It was about belonging, and yeah. And then we cleaned up the whole John Wood, because that night they had the performance, the auto cores is what they called it, which was a bunch of clown shows, um, which I watched, and there was like 7 of them, and I'm not going to get into all of it. Yeah. And then my friend came over from Utah because she wanted a place to stay, and I was like, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. So she came and stayed in my apartment, in my flat here. She's still here. She's actually sleeping right there on the ground. But she's leaving soon. And then her brother came a little later, so she's here with her brother now. But he's off at a museum. But yes, so yeah, I'm not going to break down that. But I went to see Glenn Ross with her later that weekend. But that's not it, because, wait, it's more in here. Tutorials. So then on Friday, the 3rd of July, no, I went back. The 3rd of July, I had my tutorials, and I had my first one with my director of bow stratagem, Vicky, and she says that I have great energy and positivity, good willingness and collaborativeness. I look for solutions. I lean toward large. I don't know what all this means. I should work on exploring the truth and draping the emotion. I'll like you later. I don't know what that means. But draping the emotion. Oh, dropping the emotional elevator. Um, and then I have a temptation to be breathy and to stop breathing. So I get higher pitch. And so I should work on speaking as self and dropping in. Become more physically embodied. I do these things where I'd like start to turn, but my feet would stand still. So think about like being in a shower in the morning, like even though you're confined in a space, you like reach over, you don't just like keep your feet still. You move around and you do what you need to do. So connect the feet with the whole body and connection. Be totally inhabited and connected to the floor. So don't get stuck, but be connected with the ground and connected with all that. And then imbue questions with more intention and more inhabitation of life. Information is dangerous on stage, right? Just having to like give information. So give it life. Have attitude everywhere. Have an opinion on everything. In performance, my scene partner and I really found it in our exposition scene. So that was great. But status, look into it more. Be important. Be better than others. How do I breathe? How's my tone? It's not just dismissive. Lead with generosity, but still lead, and then look for status in other people and how I see it. And then I can emulate that. And then what do others do that works? And then what makes me want to follow them? And then breath and body and voice. Raise the stakes, not just faster and louder. Look for the best in star performers and steal from them, steal their behavior. Allow myself to be able to charge. Allow myself to be able to change. Absolution is dangerous. I think it was partially about my standards, but those won't change. But be willing to adapt and live. I think it's good advice generally. But she's so sweet. And then I had my meeting with Ollie, and it was really sweet. I didn't write down any notes. I gave him a Kit Kat, which is his favorite candy, which was fun. And then we talked about. He thought this was my most successful thing yet. My restoration piece, which was good because the whole time with Vicky, I felt like I wasn't meeting where she wanted me, which is fine. It's part of the process. I still adore her as a director, and I think it's great. She's so specific and so dedicated and get you there. But yeah, we just talked and chatted about what I wanted for the next thing and how it's been, and it was good. Enjoyed it. And then I had tutorials with, what was this? Oh, well, back please. And then I had with Nicoletta, and she said integrate all things into something. A cleanup is what it looks like, but that can't be right. But movement, voice, text, integrated all. Oh, into a warm up. This all helps create ease. And it was good, and she's sweet. And then, of course, these were all getting pushed behind. And I was going to go see Toy Story 5. And so that was like getting in the way, but it was great too. And then I had my singing tutorial with Christina, and she's the one person we saw like once. And so she was like, yeah, what do you know? Like how? And it was just fine. It was short. It was good. It was whatever. And then I had mine with Jeremy for voice, and he's wonderful. He said I was quite transformative, and he's really excited for the projects. And he was asking me like if I had any information. He's kind of not gossiping, but speculating on things, and it was delightful. He's delightful. But that ended it. like I said, I flew out. Oh, where's my calendars? Yeah. I think I flew out on Sunday. Yeah, I flew out on Sunday. No, I flew out on Saturday. So I must have seen, yeah, I saw Glengarry Glen Ross Friday night with my friend who got in town after Toy Story 5, which I was a little late for because, and there's this whole thing with the Lime bikes. So I was like, I got to get there quick. But then I got a Lime bike and my first one, the chain was off. And I was like, I need to switch, but it still charged me. So I was like, beep. Then I got on another one and then I couldn't like park it where I wanted to. And so I had to go back and I was still super late. I was like, I could have just walked faster. But it was good. And then Glengarry Glen Ross was great. It was at the Old Vic and it was like super poignant and interesting and quick and yeah, punchy. And then I went home and then I spent a lovely time with my dear wife and my precious boy. It was great and it was revitalizing. And I've decided that I'm going to go home. I'm going to graduate with my MA in October, and then I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to have a year off, or who knows what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to start the F portion to get my MFA online in September 2027. So I'm Utah bound for the next little bit, unless something totally changes with other things. But that's the life. That's the dream. That's where we're at. And that was week 9, last week of term 3, the busiest, hardest week. And now on to week 1 and term 4. Love I.